One of the toughest parts about being a general music classroom teacher is the fact that you inherit a class with many different academic abilities, but also many different musical experiences or lack of musical experiences. You find this particularly when they change schools and they move up into middle school or high school, and that you're inheriting students from lots of feeder elementary schools or feeder middle schools who have all done different curriculums and had different musical experiences. So how do we help our general music students accelerate from becoming a beginner and becoming more advanced and confident in music making? I'm Rachel Hardman, and this is Passionate About Music Education. And unless you've been in this experience, it's really hard to explain to your colleagues how to manage this situation, because you're not just managing academic ability and differentiation, you are also managing musical experiences. So you will find some students are having private lessons and have been doing music exams and they've been playing the piano or violin or whatever instrument for a long time, so they need stretching in their musical tasks. And you'll find some students who have never played a musical instrument and all they've done is sing, which is absolutely perfectly fine. And some students have come through schools where they've had a different primary music teacher or a different middle school music teacher every year. I know in the situation I'm in, some students didn't have music for 2 years prior to me arriving because there wasn't a music teacher. So although they're 14 years old, for the last 2 years they've had no musical experience. So they'll come to me academically able, but in terms of musical experience, they may be 2 or 3 years behind through no fault of their own. So how do we go about bridging that gap and accelerating their musical skills and understanding and knowledge in our general music programs so our students can really achieve and fly in music and find a desire to go and learn a musical instrument, to go and join a choir, to go and join a band, to continue learning music, to go and have those one-to-one lessons, or take them exam classes as they go up to high school or go off to university? How do we do that at the stage we have them, whether it's elementary, middle or high school? So in this video I'm going to talk about some really good action points that you can put in place that I have found that works really well, whether you're applying this to general music classroom, whether you're applying this to one-to-one instrumental teaching, choir, band programs, beginner ensembles. So the first piece of advice I'm going to give you is to demonstrate, to model and to play along with the students. If you're asking students at beginner level to play saxophone, trumpet, clarinet, and you can play those instruments and you're in a one-to-one setting, model so they hear what they're aiming for. We know that we'd love them to go and listen to music and listen to those great saxophonists, but they don't at this stage. So you are the model, you are the person they're trying to copy and imitate. The more you can model, that's really great. And again, if you're in general music classroom and you're teaching composition, you're teaching the students the blues scale, which they all love, demonstrate it on the piano or your own specific instrument, play it live to them, and then demonstrate the steps of the composition task so they can see that what you're doing is what you're asking them to do, then that you've broken them down into steps. Action point 2 is all about posture and tension in the body when we're learning an instrument. And when I was teaching internationally in Switzerland, I put together a band string program for my beginner students in middle school, so they got a chance to play instruments. And it was really obvious to me, and I'm sure if you're teaching band program you know this too, how much the way they were holding the instrument and the posture and the weird positions they put themselves in when they play saxophone can really have an impact on the quality of sound. So and it's the same for singing, that whole breathing and how they, often when you start singing they all go and don't breathe in properly. And I'm talking about how the body physically works in terms of their instrument and how to take out the tension and to make sure that the instrument doesn't hurt. It's really important. And I remember going to a convention and there were some specialists there talking about physiotherapy and looking after your body and that we shouldn't have pain or tension when we play a flute or the trumpet. And I think that's really important that we talk about that at the beginning stages, whether it's teaching piano technique or how they sit the piano or keyboards in your classroom. The big difference, I think, when you're doing this in a general setting as opposed to a one-to-one is in a one-to-one setting you can fix any posture quite quickly, and you can talk about it and you can demonstrate it. When you've got 25 children starting out on the keyboard, you can give them one step at a time. So you might start with, try to use all your fingers, try to bring your thumb onto the keyboard, try to keep a nice shape, try not to dip your wrists, not hurting. Think about how far you're sitting away from the keys. But if you try and give all of that in one go, for most students it's irrelevant, and they won't actually go away and try that because they just want to play the keyboard. They want to learn those beginner tunes, which is absolutely right. So in general music, teaching and working on posture is a little bit every time, as opposed to when you're doing this in one-to-one, you might spend 10-15 minutes fixing posture and taking out the tension in the body, particularly in the shoulders, where they all tend to do this. Action point 3 is to keep a balance between playing and theory, particularly in general music classroom setting. We want our students to get as much exposure to playing in the classroom as we can. And although we know theory is so important, because once they understand that, they can accelerate, if the only experience they have of playing a keyboard or ukulele or guitar, whatever it is that you're doing in your classroom, is in your 30-50 minute lesson, and they don't have any access to music outside, then it's really important that they go and play for those 30, 40, 50 minutes, or as much of your lesson as possible. And again, like posture in a general music classroom, theory should be dripped in 1 point each lesson, so that you're not overwhelming students and also giving them lots of knowledge that they're not applying. We know key signatures are really important, but if they're not playing in anything other than C major, then at those early stages, teaching them all the complicated theory is, of course, great knowledge, but then they're not applying it to that instrument. So if they're using C major to compose, then you talk about the C major key signature, or the A minor, you again talk about that key signature. But if you're starting to talk about 5 sharps and 5 flats, it's going to be irrelevant. So lots of playing and bring the theory in that's relevant to what they are doing as your task is really important to keep them engaged, and also to increase their musical ability in performance, which then improves their composing and their listening and understanding. And the theory comes alongside it. Action point 4. Break your tasks into small chunks and small steps that are easy to follow, and that are the steps of achievement. So at the moment, I have students learning serialism in my class, and they are having to learn to play the chromatic scale. They are learning how to work out the 12 notes to make a tone row, and then the next step would be to write your tone row. Third step, vary the pitch. Fourth step, vary beat lengths. Fifth step, vary the voice if you're playing on a keyboard, so that you can have different sounds. But breaking it into steps, it gives them some scaffolding to work on. And the students who are more successful are the students who are working through those steps. And when you hear the students perform their work in progress, because they're doing a composing task in a general music setting, you can then refer back to the steps, and you can say, right, students, which steps did this student perform or demonstrate or show? And once they start to see that you have broken the task into easy, manageable steps that they can follow and apply, then they will see that those steps will make them go quicker, faster, and make more progress. Action point 5, wherever possible, support the learning with diagrams, posters in your classroom, pictures of the keyboard on your PowerPoint. It's really important that visual information is there to see, because again, if you're teaching in a class of 25 or 30 students general music making, and you're doing ukulele or keyboards, you can't help every person constantly, especially if they're working individually or you're giving them a bit of practice time. But having diagrams, having information in front of them, asking them to be proactive about learning and using this information is really important. I always have a keyboard diagram on my keyboards. I don't write the letters on there. I refuse to write letters on the keyboards, because it's easy for them to learn if you've given them the steps, and I do expect students to learn it. I always have, when they're doing a group work or composing, up on the PowerPoint, any information, music theory that's relevant. So again, I might have the keyboard diagram, I might have the C major scale if we're using that, I might have the stave notation or beat values, or anything that we are using or learning. I will also keep that up, so it's constantly inner insight for them to refer back to. Action point 6, I think this is really important, and if you're running a choir or you're running classroom singing, please play the melody in with your accompaniment. It's really important, as sometimes we forget that those wonderful musical theatre songs, they're on the ABRS syllabus as a grade 6 piece, and we're doing it in class, and then we're expecting them to sing unison singing or sing in harmony without any support. But our students are really still sort of that beginner grade 1 standard singing, and often you will find your accompanists might not understand that, because again, they're so used to working with professional choirs, professional singers, that they will just play the accompaniment, yet your beginners will still need those notes to support the pitching. And of course you want them to sing it without support, and you want to play the accompaniment properly, but in those early stages, in that beginning rehearsal stage, put as much of the melody line in as you can. And also, again, in terms of the harmony, if you're singing in harmony, give some of those tricky harmony notes. I find that often if I can't find that note easily, then absolutely students aren't going to find it easy. So that is my job as their coach, is to try and give them the support as they're singing the song so they're successful. And I do drop out their melody line once they are more confident, but I judge it on how well they can do it every time. And we have to remember our beginners need a lot more support than our one-to-one singing students or our professional colleagues who can sing these songs and hold their melody line, because they've got that 10, 15, 20 years of experience of doing that. And action point 7 is my last point, is teach students to be self-reflective, because that's how they progress for themselves, whether that's in a one-to-one setting or in your classroom. Ask them, if you had 10 more minutes, what would you do next? What went well? What would you improve? In my one-to-one lessons, I'll often say, right, you've played it through once. Okay, we're going to play it again. What are you going to focus on this time? So it might be technique, it might be musical phrasing, it might be dynamics, it might be rhythm, pitch, whatever it is that the students need to work on, they will know. And the more you give them the space and the opportunity to be self-reflective and become a coach rather than a teacher telling them the answer, give them the space to think about it, they will then be more proactive and being able to improve for themselves, which is how they will become better musicians, go at quicker speed, and will make more progress, because they're owning their own learning, which is really important that we encourage that. And of course, our beginner students, whichever year group you get them, they don't know how to do this, but the more we train them to do that throughout this academic year, you will see the difference as they come through to the next year and the next year, that they are thinking for themselves and they are able to get on much more quicker into your task and be more reflective about their learning and more proactive about what they are doing, because you've taught them the foundation steps in that first year that they're with you. I hope these tips have been really helpful for you to implement into your classroom to help your beginners accelerate and find that joy for music making. And I look forward to seeing you again here on Passionate About Music Education. If you've enjoyed this video or any of the other videos, please like and subscribe to the channel. To those of you who already done that, thank you, it means so much. And I'll keep sharing here. If you have any topics you'd like me to go over, please leave comments. I do read them all, and I look forward to seeing you soon. I'm Rachel Hardman, and this is Passionate About Music Education.